Coming up,
We are a community of people in recovery. We come from all different parts of the state.
this grassroots sobriety movement has traveled to communities across the state for more than 30 years. How it helps to raise awareness.
I wake up, I'm thinking of meth. I go to the bathroom, I'm thinking of meth. I eat, I'm thinking of meth.
How it teaches communities to help themselves and each other.
When the drugs started coming in, we thought, no, it's not going to happen.
Ahead, change and hope at the Rural Providers Conference.
Sponsorship for Frontiers with Rhonda McBride is provided by your local Alaska Toyota dealers. Toyota, let's go places. Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief that the best is yet to come. Bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to Frontiers. This program is the first in a two-part series about a grassroots Native sobriety movement called the Rural Providers Conference. Over the last 3 decades, it's covered a lot of ground because every 2 years it moves to a new community. This August, Tanacross hosted the gathering. It's an Athabascan community in the Upper Tanana region near Tok, a community that is ready to heal. Although the geography changes, there are some things about this annual gathering that stay the same.
We're engaged in a process of recovery. So when we come together once a year, every single moment that we have here is precious.
Doug Modig is one of the founders of the Rural Providers Conference, an alcoholic who has maintained his sobriety for more than 30 years.
You have to learn to live without your best friend.
The gathering started as a way for counselors and traditional healers, many who also struggle with addiction, to rededicate themselves to the fight against drugs and alcohol.
We're at war. We're fighting against drugs and alcohol.
Fighting as one to support each other and the movement. In many ways, Rural Providers is like a family reunion where old friends gather to dance and sing, to celebrate sobriety.
We are a community of people in recovery. We come from all different parts of the state.
One community that comes to another to learn and share.
In the modern society we live in, most people are expected to be individuals, to be the strong individual. And traditionally we thought and worked as a community. And the things that we needed to do, we did as a community. And we shared as a community.
Gary Simple has never been to a Rural Providers Conference before.
I used to be on the street, drink, and all that stuff.
Gary is here to share his story of recovery.
As a kid, I remember I couldn't wait to grow up so I can drink and go fight and do stuff.
He was angry and didn't know why until he realized fetal alcohol syndrome was part of his own struggle. Gary found peace on the land, hunting and trapping for his grandparents, and through music. So many stories, so much to share. Every Rural Providers Conference makes time to do that.
If you cannot see in your mind's eye where you want to be, you just tend to wander around.
At every gathering, everyone is asked to envision a better future, then talk about how to get there.
Where's the source of your problem? You have to dig down deep like a wound. In order for it to heal, you have to dig down and dig it up and clean it out.
My husband used to beat on me and just made me black and blue from head to all over. But at the time of his death, He asked me to forgive him.
For years, we had a lot of suicides, and it was a funeral a week for a while. And that builds up, and it's layers and layers and decades of trauma.
The stories shared are hard to hear.
Stories don't cost anything.
Yet they are so valuable in the healing process. Then, the next step.
Looking within ourselves, within our communities, and identifying our strengths, where we're strong, where we're good. A lot like a woman who's with child. Like a community is with child, and that child is that vision.
Doug Modig asked the group to picture, as sober, the most chronic alcoholics they know. He did.
They were just so pitiful and so beat down, I could not believe that they'd ever get sober.
But then one day, like many in this room, they proved everyone wrong.
Visions are powerful because they can move mountains when nothing else will.
First the vision, and then the hard work. Up next, lessons on how to fight meth from Northway, a tiny community on the Canadian border.
We stopped it, and a lot of the kids would attend our meetings too.
It sends a loud and powerful message out to the community.
A partnership between a group called Take a Stand and state troopers, how together they made a difference. One important ritual at the Rural Providers Conference to share success stories, and that's what a group called Take a Stand came to do. They hail from Northway, a tiny community southeast of Tok, about 50 miles from the Canadian border. Meth dealers thought they had an easy target, but found out otherwise. Most drivers don't take the time to enjoy the scenery around Northway. Instead, they pass through quickly, unless they need food or fuel. Northway is the last place to gas up before you cross into Canada. Tourists and hunters sometimes stop to buy snacks or shop for souvenirs. Among the offerings, a wealth of beadwork, hand-sewn moccasins, and baskets made from birch bark and spruce.
The spruce roots, you have to dig into the sand or into the ground. The thread right here is spruce roots.
The beauty of the artwork is a window into the Athabascan world, before alcohol and drugs.
It's been rough, it's been scary.
Lorraine Titus is one of the leaders of Take a Stand, a group that formed to drive meth dealers out of Northway.
One day a parent found meth in his house on the floor. They had little kids in that house, and I don't know if you've all seen the little package of meth. It looks like those rock candies that those kids can throw in their mouth and it sizzles in their mouth.
That's when the community woke up.
We counted like 15 of our people that were on meth.
In a community of about 70, that's about 20% of the population.
Right now, I can strongly say that we probably have 2 people that are on meth and that are slowly coming off.
So how did Northway turn its runaway drug problem around? That's what everyone here wants to know.
How did you build that relationship with the troopers?
We invited the troopers in. They knew we were serious. They knew we were serious.
Some of the neighboring communities have also been blindsided by drugs.
We didn't know she was doing heroin. I thought she was just brokenhearted.
Christina Maria Clark died from an overdose of heroin in January at the age of 25. Only 3 years earlier, she was crowned Miss Atna and became a runner-up in the Miss World Indian Eskimo Olympics competition.
What can we do? We're in the beginning stages of where Northway was.
It has to come from your heart. You can't just do it because you want to do it. It takes a lot of commitment.
Commitment that began with a community meeting, a lot like this one.
What we did at our first meeting, we put a bowl in the middle of the floor and we had people write names of people they wanted prayers for.
The whole village of Northway came together and put their hands around me and held me.
Carolyn Dillard believes the community saved her life.
I wake up, I'm thinking of meth. I go to the bathroom, I'm thinking of meth. I eat, I'm thinking of meth. Meth totally took our heart, our mind, our soul. everything.
While meth addicts like Carolyn found love and support, drug dealers became the enemy.
We've got a list of names of who we can watch. We've got a list of license plates. We've got a list of vehicles that we watch.
Gerald Albert and others began to patrol Northway at night. He told the group he sometimes got only a few hours of sleep before he had to go to work.
I was threatened many times. It didn't bother me because I was doing something right.
This family's home, built right next to their old, carefully preserved homestead, tells you something about Northway.
9 or 10, maybe more, of kids were raised in that house.
Despite the powerful family bonds here, a generation or two lost their childhoods.
I'm a recovering alcoholic.
Like most of the members of Take a Stand, Lorraine Titus's parents were alcoholics.
When I started drinking at age 13, it was rebelling against them, trying to make them see that I can do the same thing and blah, 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 and it didn't faze them.
Lorraine kept drinking, even as she raised her first 2 children.
My 3 other kids, I raised without alcohol, and I can see the difference. And we talk about it a lot. I said, how did we come out of it? And it was because of unconditional love that our grandparents gave us.
But just when alcoholism began to subside in Northway, then came the next wave, meth. Once Take a Stand grasped the magnitude of the problem, they began patrols to drive the drug dealers away.
Do you get a lot of guff for being a little bit too pushy about it or inquisitive?
No, lots of support, we get from the local community.
As well as support from the Alaska State Troopers, which helped the community bridge its challenges.
It's equivalent to a community watch program in the village of Northway.
Trooper Lance Silva says he was impressed with Take a Stand's commitment.
People just drive down the road, keep an eye out, looking for suspicious activity, people in cars like, what are you doing at a pullout at 2 o'clock in the morning when it's negative 45 degrees outside in February?
Trooper Silva encouraged the patrol not to confront the dealers, to leave it to him to investigate. But he says Take a Stand provided valuable information.
We're not everywhere 24/7, so when we have community members reporting things that are happening in the area, then it makes you want to try hard to help out the community, to show them that their Take a Stand group is worth its while.
So far, the scourge of meth has hit mostly young adults. For now, the children have escaped, but the predators are still out there.
When they come in, we'll get tips from Tok, we'll get tips from Tanacross, we'll get tips from Tatlin, saying they're on their way up here.
But thanks to the community's vigilance, the kids score baskets, not drugs.
I'm proud of what we have accomplished.
A little insight into Northway and why they're so tough. The community got its name from Chief Walter Northway. When he died in 1993, he was more than 115 years old, known for trapping and making snowshoes. Well, ahead, the power of culture to heal. Amy and Doug Modig are big believers in that. Their journey of recovery when we come back. The Rural Providers Conference is funded and supported by Rural Cap, a nonprofit agency, but its leaders come from the ranks of the sobriety movement. Every 2 years, a married couple is chosen to serve as role models, and when their term is up, they join other couples who have served in that same capacity, and together they help organize the gatherings. And joining us now, one of the couples, the first couple to set this chain of leadership in motion, Doug and Amy Modig, and they helped to launch this movement 34 years ago, and actually maybe before that, because there were things leading up to that. But what was the impetus for Rural Providers?
Well, what we wanted to do was to help people help themselves in recovery. And when we had our conversations with the elders, they told us, as you talked about earlier in the show, is that if there's no vision, there's no development. And that, but even more important is that the development that occurs from that vision has to come from within the community.
And what was your vision at the time, Amy, when you were helping to organize Rural Providers?
What I wanted to see was to have our Native communities be a healing place, for their young people. And that's what happened in First and Tyonek, was that we had a large involvement with the young people who were...
Now, we have some photographs to show people this span of time, because this was in Tyonek, right?
Yes, in 1986, there's Phyllis Chelsea speaking, and we had this huge talking circle in this beautiful building in Tyonek.
And who is that besides you?
And that is Rodney Grant, the star in Dances with Wolves.
So he came to one of the early rural
in
providers.
1991.
There you are, Doug, with him.
I was his bodyguard.
What, too many women chasing
Oh man,
after?
the guy was just a star. He was.
How exciting, though, to have a celebrity there. Now, here you are in Bethel at a later Rural Providers Conference, and with your baby, Charlie. He's there
1994.
in the picture.
Yeah.
So, Charlie has kind of grown up in the movement.
He has. In order to help people in recovery, you have to model the behavior that we want. And so we grow leadership by involving our young people from the very, very beginning. So Charlie's been involved ever since the beginning.
Now, one of the things I really enjoy about Rural Providers is the cultural sharing, that people are invited to share whatever talent they have. And here is Charlie sharing his martial arts. You must be very proud to see what he's accomplished, and proud for other people to see that.
Oh yeah, I'm glad I didn't mistreat him when he was young, because he's really good. He's like a third-degree Taekwondo.
But what does this do for the conference?
Well, what it does is it demonstrates to people that this is accessible, and that as they grow, or as young people grow, they can figure out different ways to express themselves.
And I guess people must have a special feeling for Charlie because they keep coming to this conference and they see this young man grow in, a sober, healthy life. One of the things that is also so special is the sharing of ideas. And I know you were very impressed with Northway's presentation.
Yeah, that's development from within, right? And so when Lorraine came and shared with us what their vision was and what they were doing, she, by her sharing, engaged people in a learning process, a great learning process of what to do and how to do it, and demonstrated by her own behavior.
So do you think over the years, as people keep coming to this conference, and some maybe come some years, others not, but it seems more like a family reunion. But Amy, do you think that people continue to grow from bouncing off of each other, sharing ideas?
Yeah, I think that when they come in and they say, and they'll actually tell us, on the street, I got sober in 1987, and they keep coming back to the Rural Providers and they check in on other people who got sober at Rural Providers. And they say, well, I got sober in Seward, or I got sober in Kodiak or Dillingham. And so it gives that ability to link sobriety with all these other people across the state, and it feels like we're sharing this, healthy step forward into sobriety.
How do you feel about the decision to rotate the conference from place to place every 2 years, sometimes urban, or maybe an urban hub, perhaps like Nome or Kotzebue, but then go to a tiny village like Tenacross this year?
Well, it's a lot of responsibility, and the features that are specific to Tenacross is that it's native, probably one of the more traditional villages that we've worked with around the state, and two, that it's such a heavy responsibility that to continue doing this conference year after year in one single place does a couple of things. One is that it gets tiresome, I'm pretty sure. And the other is that there's no chance to refresh or renew the different issues that people are addressing when they come to a new place.
And I guess the first year people kind of get used to what's going on, and then maybe the word gets around, and then they turn up for the second year.
So far, so good. The people learn during the first year. The second year, almost always, always gets better.
So, Amy, what's your favorite part of Rural Providers?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say that in Tanacross, it was just amazing because you had, like maybe 100 people in the community, and they were able to provide every one of the meals, which has never happened before, with any of the rural providers.
And they actually got a moose for this
yes,
occasion.
And breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it was, and that have the young people just so involved, cleaning up every little piece of litter in the community and making sure that they were building tables and chairs, the day before that we came. It was still, working so hard, just making it so special. And what I like the most is the sharing of their traditions, and one of them is the potlatch. And every night they fed the people. And I know next year they're going to, we hope to have it a little bit more easier on their participation, not to make it quite so stressful.
Do you think, though, they'll let you get away with that?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm really proud of Tanacross.
Well, I have to just mention this is because I'm wearing a beaded necklace that and they were giving them out to every woman that was at the conference. And, I just can't imagine how much work it took to get ready for this conference.
Months and months, yeah.
Is that healthy?
Being able to share with people is very healthy. And when they're making them, they put their love into them, their positive thoughts, and that they, within a cultural context, sharing in that way helps to create health not only for them, but in the future. And it highlights a part that helps people sort of guard their luck. And when you think about guarding their luck within the Athabascan context, it's like you live a good life, you will have a good life. And being able to move forward in that is part of the gift that not only did they give by a necklace, but by making the gift, they also shared with us.
Well, next week we're going to focus more on Tanacross and tell some of their history. But do you think that Tanacross is an interesting village to look at as far as kind of the big changes that from Western society?
Definitely. I think that the kinds of struggles that Tanacross had in their history is really representative of what a lot of communities faced, but our changes didn't start happening until the 20s and 30s. Even though our St. Timothy's Athabascan, or the Episcopal Church was built in 1911, we didn't really have a large presence of non-Native people until like 1942, when the World War II brought the Tanacross Airport, and then we had an influx of like 5,000 men that were in a camp there, in encampment, and that's where my dad was able to help build the Alaska Highway.
So boy, so you've got some close connections there. Well, we have just a tiny bit of time left. Has Rural Providers made a difference in your mind?
So far, so good. As far as people have shared with us, that it has in fact impacted their lives and the lives of their children. And, we just pray for a new and better tomorrow as we go along.
All right, well, I want to thank you very much for sharing with us today, Doug and Amy Modig. And we also want to thank those at the Rural Providers Conference who shared their stories with us. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week for part 2 of our trip this summer to Tanacross.
Hey,